Good evening. My name is Garrett Elliott. I am a former counselor of North Cowichan, and currently I'm a counselor for Cowichan tribes. It is my distinct pleasure to have the opportunity to ask a few questions of our inductees this evening. Hajka. So Jerry, tell me, how does a Welsh rugby cricket player get into the world of slow pitch?
Well, actually, it was I was at the Legion one evening, and Sergeant Doyle, the RCMP, he said, "We're one short tomorrow. Come on out." I said, "Well, I play cricket. I don't play slow pitch." So he said, "No, come on out anyway." So I went out, and I played center field with no glove. And of course, everybody thought it was, who's this hot shot in center field? But when they see me up the bat, they realize that I wasn't much of a hot shot. I was a cricket player.
Cricket player. Did you hold the bat down like this?
Yeah, I didn't know how to hold it. I'd never seen a game before, so it was kind of interesting.
How many years have you been involved with slow pitch?
I've been involved with slow pitch since 77, I guess. 76, 77.
Now you, you've been very busy. You've been the coach, the manager, the umpire, the organizer, everything, and you've been successful, winning numerous provincials and national championships. Out of all that success, what stands out the most?
Well, winning the national title was huge. But watching all my players improve over the years, and we all became a big family. We used to camp together and played lots of tournaments. And seeing an average player becoming a really good player. And
so you were part of the Cowichan Sportsplex board. Looking back at it now, how satisfying was that for you to see?
It's fantastic, and we owe a lot to the late Stu Pitts. He got me involved, and then become a director down there. And I think it's fantastic. Now we've got a new soccer field going in. We got the Evans fields.
So out of all those years and being involved with different sports in the Cowichan Valley, softball was a big part of your life. What does it mean to be recognized in the Sports Wall of Fame for you?
Well, it's quite an honor, of course,
Yeah.
but it's a little bit of a shock. You know, it's but as I said, I'm really honored to be here. But I don't think it's really sunk in yet.
I'm with Jane James. James, you really were a pioneer in the therapeutic riding. Can you describe to me when that really took off and started here in the Valley?
Yes, it was 1986, and we started with a very small group at a stable south of town, and 2 years later moved to Providence Farm, and I think the rest is history. We've been there for almost 30 years.
There really is a connection for a person once they get on the horse, isn't there?
Absolutely. I've seen children who are nonverbal interact with the horse, and they usually start by talking to the horse, and sooner or later they end up talking to us. So that's
amazing.
It is.
That's
it is.
amazing.
It's very special.
Wow. You talked about your national experience, or with the national program, sorry. You were the chef d'equipe with the Canadian para dressage team. Quite the responsibility and honor. Can you highlight some of your memories from that?
The last one I was chef d'equipe for was Athens, and that was memorable. We got a couple of medals, and it was sort of the beginning of our team growing and starting to get up there so that they were able to get medals. And I'm really happy to say that after Athens, I changed hats and became an official. So I'm an FEI para-equestrian steward, a level 2 steward. So I've been to a couple of other large events, World Equestrian Team Games and Paralympics. And I have to say I like the stewarding better. But our team has done really well in Canada, and it has been really an experience to be there from the beginning.
I'm with Melanie Slade BRANCATO. Melanie, you've had a distinguished career in field hockey. When did you start?
I started in elementary school here in the Valley at bench school with Brian Stott, and then went through all my schooling here with amazing coaches, Carolyn Prowitz at Bonner and Peter Wilson and Shirley Mokler at Cowichan High School.
You played for the UBC Thunderbirds for 5 seasons, starting in 1984, and
Yeah.
followed that by 5 more seasons as the team's assistant coach. You are the most acclaimed and successful contributor to the school's field hockey program. This is one of your coaches said that about you. Tell me about that period of time in your life.
It's a pretty amazing time for a small town girl to go to the big city and walk onto a field hockey team and get the opportunity to play right away. You kind of think when you're going into the big city that you're going to be sitting on the bench or being on the junior varsity team, and I managed to walk on and get to play right off the bat, and opportunities just came from there. So the system of getting to the national team was really through the university program at that time. It's different now, and I managed to play well enough to be seen by national coaches, and got picked up for the junior national team for a couple of years, and then on to the senior team. So it was amazing. Had great support there, great people to play with, great coaches.
You spent 4 years on the national team, which included the Seoul Olympics. Now looking back now nearly 27 years later, how do you remember your Olympic experience?
The time in Seoul itself was kind of a blur, because once you're there, you're caught up and you're going back and forth to the field. And Seoul, there was a lot of security stuff, so that's all, you're going through gates and you're getting checked and you're having to just go through security protocols. And for us in '88 with the Ben Johnson scandal, that's all anybody really wanted to talk about when we were trying to focus on what we were there for. So opening and closing ceremonies were probably the biggest highlights for me at the games themselves. And we were fortunate to train there quite a bit in advance and getting to play against the Korean team, some test matches. And that's when we got a chance to see Seoul and to interact with people there on the ground and see the city and see the countryside. Where during the Olympics itself, you're just kind of full on and it just is happening and you're trying to keep up.
Neil, you started in the old Duncan Basketball League, and then you moved to Cowichan High Thunderbirds. When did you first realize you had the skill that this may lead to bigger and better things?
Well, Garrett, it all started off with, it's sort of all in the family. My dad and his uncles, or his brothers, were, if you go to Bucky's, you'll see them on the wall there. So they were a dynamite in a dynasty in the 30s. And then I really started getting active when I was at elementary school with Mr. Gillette. And they started the Duncan midget basketball. And there was Jim Kane, and there were all those coaches, and I played for the Duncan Ironworks. So that really got me going, but it was all in the family. Okay, the apple didn't fall very far from the tree.
Your experience with the Alberni senior teams, what was that like? And
Well, that was quite an experience, because I realized that, like in grade 11, if I wanted to go to a university to get a scholarship, I had to move on beyond Cowichan. And the Alberni athletics were a domineering factor in that time. So in grade 12, I didn't play for Cowichan High School. And I played for the Alberni athletics. And then from then, we played a lot of American teams. Kirk's Pharmacy, Friendly Chevrolet, Fort Lewis, as well as the Vancouver teams. And I got the exposure, and then I had a chance to get a scholarship down in the States.
you played, going to the States, you played for Marv Harshman. He's a legendary coach with the national team and collegiately. What was he like?
Marv was a great man. I mean, he had 13 years at Pacific Lutheran University, then he moved over to Washington State. And I was lucky to be there in his freshman class, at the freshman, his first year there. And I played with him for 4 years, and then actually I went back in 68 to 67, 68 to work on my master's, and I was assistant coach for Marv.
So quite often now you get scouting reports on players, where their weaknesses and different things are like that. What would be a scouting report on you?
Well, that's a good question. I was an aggressive player, and I was what you'd classify as a strong forward, postman. I was never the tallest player on the field or the basketball team. So once in a while I did jump center. But I was very strong offensively and rebounding, and I actually did a few fouls. Yeah, I was aggressive, let's put it that way.
Only when you needed to, right?
It's a non-contact sport, by the way. Yeah.
I'm with Gary Ducalo, affectionately known as Dukes, and we're going to talk about the 96-97 rugby team, affectionately known as the Piggies. Gary, it seems with most successful teams, people talk about how tight-knit the group is. Can you tell me about your team and the individuals?
Yeah, it was a very special group. The whole thing started back in '93, where we were looking for a coach. We didn't have a good season. I had retired, I think, for the second time at that point, and somebody mentioned Tony Medina, who had just moved into the area. So I spoke to him, and I'd been watching our games from a distance and just had a really good perspective on the resources that we had in terms of the individuals. And he said, I will go to the club. There's 5 things you have to do, and he mentioned them off. And one of them was he asked me to come back and play, which was kind of nice. And so Tony started something in '93 that was brilliant. And within 3 years, we got to the final. It was a group that became incredibly close to each other. We all came from different places, but there was a tremendous sort of family love in the group that I think came from Thursday nights around the piano. It was a group that I had blown my knee out and I wasn't involved in the '96, but I still felt like I was part of the team. I helped Tony as the assistant coach, and it was such a diverse group. We had, people that were free spirits, big time, and friends of, committed Christians, and there was no difference between all of us because we had one thing in goal, and that was to play for each other. And it was a very special group. Wayne Peace comes to mind as a tight head, one of my greatest friends of all time on the rugby field, on and off. And we had a few guys from overseas, but Tony didn't go outside the community. It was a place where people came, and we got together like no other team, I don't think. And there weren't any stars, there weren't any Canadian players on the team. It was just a bunch of guys that loved to play with each other and committed to each other. And it was just a very special memory, and we're honored to be honored at this event.
So I'm with Marius, and we're continuing to talk about the Piggies' wonderful year. The Bernard Cup, the Island Championship, was against James Bay. There's a long history between the two clubs, and there was a bit of controversy leading up to that. Can you tell me what that was about?
Yeah. So we were slated to play James Bay in the Island Final, which is Bernard Cup. It's a big event for both clubs. And James Bay had several players, as I remember, who were away playing rep rugby, and James Bay tried to change the date. In fact, got the date changed, which in the big picture, I guess, is a bit of gamesmanship. But at the end of the day, all of us wanted to play the best team that James Bay had, and so we were quite happy to play them in the final with all their stars. And as Gary said earlier, we just stuck to the task and played for each other, and it was terrific. And we ended up beating them, and they weren't very happy, but we were, so it was good.
I'm with Dave Grisdale, affectionately known as Chili. The Roundsfield Cup, did the team peak for that game?
I would have to say the team peaked the game previous, as Marius mentioned about James Bay. I thought that was our preparation as well as it was for this game, but I think for the Island final, because it was James Bay and all the history against James Bay, I think we put all the cylinders and we were running, everybody was working hard, and I think we peaked at that game. I think it all worked out there, and going into the final against Burnaby, no disrespect to Burnaby, but I think it's like we peaked and we were ready for the final, but there's always the unknown heading into the Island final, and it just, we got in the change room, and with the strong characters that we have, it just came together. I thought that was our best performance. I'm
with John Batty, the captain of the provincial winning team. John, can you tell me a little bit about that final game and the defensive stand you guys put up, which I hear was like 10 minutes on the back line? That's incredible.
We had a lot of those stands, and it was that much more exciting to do it in a game like that. Everyone on the team knew that to your left and to your right, those players were committed as you were. We all depended on each other. You knew the guy beside you was going to make that tackle, and that was an awesome feeling. And just how many times that we did that to teams that it surprised a lot of those teams that had, 5 or more Canada players on there, and it was pretty hard on them not being able to get through us, through our defense. It was just that solid. That was our bread and butter, was people not being able to attack through us, and if anybody did, we were back to together to stop them. So it was just awesome to think back to how strong that was, and that's what teams would say most about us. It's just how hard it was to run through.